Hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Real Side. I'm Bob Mover, and my throat's a little scratchy today, but I'm very happy to have with us one of my dearest friends for quite a long period of our lives, a very fine, wonderful drummer and great arranger, band leader, and overall wonderful human being as well. Let's not leave that out. The great Art Lillard is with us today. Hello, Art.
Hello, Mr. Mover.
Yes, Mr. Lillard. Yes, we've gone back to Mr. now, though I was not known as that. Actually, Art is about 2 years older than me. What are you, 2 years older than me?
I'm 74.
And I'm 72.
All right.
And we originally met in Miami when I believe you were about 20 and I was about 18.
I was more like 18 and you were at the time, as I understand, 15 or something.
15 or 16. Oh, that young. No, it
Yeah.
couldn't have been then. No, because my sister would have been 12 and you were not dating her then.
No, okay. But I first saw you playing with Ira Sullivan and Stan Getz somewhere in the Grove in South Florida. And you had been doing a session and trading fours, playing about 3 or 4 tunes I saw. And then Mr. Getz seemed to leave prematurely a little bit. But for my money, what you were playing was just as good as Stan Getz or Ira Sullivan. And I was just spellbound that someone so young could be playing at such a high level. And
Thank you. Yeah.
I told myself at the time, like, someday I will get good enough to play with this man. And I did make it come true eventually.
Well, you did. We did a lot of playing. We played quite a lot in this incarnation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I was like 17 or something, and then years later, well, actually, we kind of when I first met you, I wasn't sure about you because you were dating my sister, my younger
Oh,
sister Joy, who's a
yes.
wonderful woman. She's still around, and but you were espousing the freer aspects of jazz. You were about to go up to Woodstock and study with Karl Berger and some, which we should talk about because I mean, I can see the value of that in the long run.
He
And
was a very good teacher, actually.
yeah,
He,
it was just
he
a
could
very.
get,
Go ahead.
he could get mediocre players together and make them sound good. With a few words, few choice words. This guy play a little more passionately, you play less notes and use more space. You comp more. I mean, he just sussed out people's strength and weaknesses immediately. And he had such a sweet disposition. And he was just a brilliant teacher. You know,
He
it
was a
was
really nice guy. I met him a couple of times with Lee Konitz,
yeah.
and they were friends. And Lee introduced me, and he was a nice cat. And I
Right.
remember now, but that school was DeJohnette up there too at that time. This was in Woodstock.
Came and played. There was about 6 drum sets in our little house there. Out of 13 people, I think there was 6 drummers. And I was pleased that Jack liked my set the most and played on that set a solo for about 15 minutes. And we were all spellbound by this man.
Uh-huh.
He's brilliant.
He wasn't, I mean, he was just starting to get, to establish his reputation outside of Chicago in those days too. I don't think he'd been that long on the East Coast. And I remember you were going up and it was Karl Berger. Who else was teaching up there?
Well,
At,
Anthony Braxton was up there.
uh,
Don Cherry, um, this trombone player called Snake. Um, it's just a bunch of really cool people.
So did you get next to Don Cherry at all when you were up there?
Uh, Not much. Dave Holland was up there. I
Uh,
practiced him with a bit of playing on the upright bass that I was a bass player, which at the time was a lie. But I wanted to go to his bass teaching thing, which was like a 4 hour thing. And it was amazing how together this guy was, how he went from the very beginning, to like up to playing free and bebop and everything, playing the bass. And yeah, it was really together.
yeah, he's a master musician. He sure is. So
Yeah.
you got to go up there, and but at that point, but the thing I remembered about you is you were feeling that there was a wave of the future, and that bebop as we knew it, and that conventional, or more mainstream jazz, was something that you had yet to really uh,
True.
respect to the extent that you
Yeah.
later did,
Well,
because
I didn't hear anybody playing any better than Bird. You know what I mean? And I still don't.
we still haven't. I mean, I
Yeah.
started to think you might have been right in the first place. That, but that the music had to change, and we had kind of a heated discussion about that one night. I remember that I kind of just we kind of disagreed with each other about that. But you were always very respectful and very nice to me. But we just kind of agreed to disagree. But the next time I ran into you, you were going to Berkeley,
Yeah.
and you had started to study, more of the inside approach to things, and had started to write arrangements and everything. And you'd completely kind of change your point of view
Yeah.
in many ways.
Well, learning harmony definitely helped my insights a bit.
Right. It wasn't all by chance, right?
Yeah.
That because I knew the only thing I knew about Woodstock, that Woodstock school, which I wasn't really informed well enough about that too, but I'd known one other person that went there, and she told me, oh, it was great. One class we just all switched instruments and played instruments that we'd never played before.
It
And
was an open-ended thing. Like what they would do is like take certain rhythms and chant to get you to think over the bar, like a 4 bar thing, and you do fives, you know what I mean? And end up with some kind of little 3 or 6 at the end. So you get to feel, uh, rhythms in a more open way, not so structured. And we
yeah, well,
would,
I think that's a very good way to teach somebody things. I This is not my original approach, and I can't remember who I stole this idea from. But I mean, I readily admit to using this, and that it's not mine. But I've been using it with my 10-year-old daughter Simona, and it's
uh-huh,
incredible. What you do is you just give somebody a rhythm. You might say ba do do da ba da ba ba, and then they have to repeat ba da ba do da ba da ba ba,
uh,
and then they can play any notes they want
right.
on their instrument, and doesn't have to be in a key, doesn't have to be anything. Ba da ba do da ba da da da, and see if they can do that, and do it 4 times.
Yeah.
So it's not just luck. And then
Yeah.
I give them one key that they have to put all the notes inside a key. Like, for instance, I might say F sharp, and now you've got to play a melody, but everything is kind of within the diatonic world of a key.
All right.
But I mean, that idea is really good to come from rhythm as
Yeah.
opposed to coming from theory or something.
I mean, I was always had a good sense of melody, and being a drummer, I was into rhythm, but my true weak spot was harmony. I had only studied like classical harmony and no parallel octaves, parallel fifths, but that didn't teach me anything about jazz. You know, it was a totally different thing when I went to Berkeley. The focus was more or less on jazz, and tritone substitutes and blah.
And who was teaching you this at Berkeley? Like, who were you? Who were your main teachers at Berkeley that were showing you harmony?
Um, Greg Hopkins was the best teacher there, the trumpet player, Greg
Oh,
Hopkins.
Greg is a master. Yeah, Greg is
He played
a great
wonderful.
arranger.
Yeah. And his bebop was just as fresh as today's milk. I mean, it was wonderful.
Oh yeah, he was up there with Tom Harrell and all those cats, man.
Uh,
Greg was as good as anybody.
I mean, I'd bring him one of my tunes and he'd suggest a couple things, like harmonically, and they always fit like a glove. It was like the weak part of my tune, and he would like bam, bam, like immediately give me something that just like really helped the whole tune.
Like a doctor, huh?
Oh yeah, kind of
Say,
like
this is your problem. You've got neuralgia. Bang,
look, use the D flat instead of the G the second time. You know what I mean, or something. Or
yeah.
you
So
can
he,
say, hey, this part of the tune, I think you can make a little better melody there. Go back to the workshop, and invariably, I knew in my own self that those were the weak parts of the tune.
yeah,
So for him to tell me, go back to the drawing board was exactly what I should have done. And when I did, I always would come up with something better. So
yeah. I
he was
mean,
very helpful.
Berkeley gets maligned sometimes, but I really think that Berkeley, if you knew the right cats to study with,
Right.
there were a lot of them there. There were like an immense amount of talent teaching at Berkeley.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there, and Garzone was in the next room, and then Bill Pierce came later, and those were just saxophone players, and there was
Yeah.
Joe Viola,
Yeah.
and then the drums did. Now was Joe Hunt was around at that time? You were
I
there.
studied with Joe. Yeah, mostly I studied with Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Joe, there's a wonderful, musician and funny guy too, and
Um,
you know,
Definitely. He helped me a lot for sure.
yeah, he was somebody that in one of my bands we would use Joe if it wasn't Bobby Ward or you
Yeah.
know Bobby Gelati was there sometimes too, and
Yeah.
but
Bob Galati was one of my favorites, with Springe, he was burning a path. I sorely miss him. He
yeah,
passed.
I mean, I right before a year or so before Bobby passed, which was a shock because he wasn't that old, or anything. I was really, and he always like kind of took care of himself too. He was not somebody that you'd think of, was any kind of drunkard or anything,
Uh,
but Bobby, we played at this place, the Lily Pad in
uh-huh,
Cambridge, and I brought Joe Cohn up, and
uh-huh.
a very nice drummer named a bass player named Will Slater, who played
Yeah.
a lot with Berganzi up there. Very nice bass player. And Bobby Ward was not able to do it, so I called Bobby Gelati, and we played a wonderful afternoon. And we got into this exchange on tune-up for about maybe 10 minutes, just drums and saxophone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really nice. And then on my birthday, I was washing the dishes, and my phone fell in the sink. Water, and that was unfortunately they couldn't restore my voice messages, which is what I'd recorded it on.
Yeah.
And I felt sad because that was really a beautiful moment. Bobby was a great listener,
Oh, yeah.
and so there were. And did you get next to Alan Dawson as well up there, or was that?
Well, I'll tell you what, twice I went to audition for Alan. And the first time he says, I'm prepared to give you a scholarship or a work study right now, but I just want to make sure that you didn't have a lucky day. I want to make sure that this is what you come to the table with. And so the next time, I guess a couple of weeks later, I was living up there with a lady, and I didn't really have any responsibilities whatsoever. And I came the next day and I brought his book and I told him, turn to a page and I'll sight read whatever you put down here. I know your book. And he asked me to do something and I said, well, I can also do it in 5/4. And I sold it in 5/4, which at that time I was studying the odd time signatures, which, are used, maybe more or less a little bit more in the freer stuff. because it's not about the harmony so much. But he liked me, and then he says, "Look, tell me when you want to go." He said he would offer scholarship, but then I went and you know with a band in New Hampshire called Antares, and for about a year we played, you know, um, tunes and freer stuff and weather report and like an Ornette tune here and there. So I was making my living playing jazz, and I had a room where I could practice as much as I want. I ended up driving out three of the people in the band because I practiced so much. I knew that this was a one time in my life. I never knew if I was going to have this much free time to practice. So I was taking advantage of it. I was playing like easy 10 hours a day, sometimes 12, 15 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And, finally they had to turn off the heat because it was the winter and, so they turned off the heat, but it didn't stop me from practicing. I was like, I'm going to get good no matter what. I'm going to catch up with Bob Mover. I'm going to catch up with some other people and make some real music. That's it. That was the only thing in my mind. Whether I made a buck or not, I couldn't give a fuck.
But how did that affect Alan? Now, Alan Dawson, you dropped out of school to do this for
Yeah.
that period of time?
I told him what I was doing, and he was like, "No, go play." He was very supportive of me joining a group and playing.
Did you go back to Berkeley after that, or was that it for
I
Berkeley?
did years later. He was gone already. And for the first semester, I took out a loan and went. But then after that, they gave me scholarships and you know and work studies and awards and stuff like that. I was
So when
playing
I knew you at Berkeley, was that after you'd been with this band, or
after, yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And that was when you first kind of got into playing a little more straight ahead and everything. And
Yeah, I mean, we were playing a lot together. We were, rehearsing new stuff all the time. I was starting to write some tunes then. Still I didn't know too much about harmony, and I would get some help with Jim Merkin or Tom Bergeron or one of the other guys in the band who knew more about harmony.
did you know Russ Gershon up there? The
I
Either
know the
Orchestra?
name. I can't
Yeah,
say it that I know him, no.
'cause he had an interesting little thing going on up there too with the
Yeah.
Either Orchestra.
Oh,
Um,
oh yeah. Oh, in fact, he had a label later, and I gave him one of my cassette tapes, and he says, "Well, I wish I would have met you later. I would have put it on the label." But it was my first release as a cassette called First Flight.
oh,
I have like 8 CDs out now with different things.
right, I'm on two of them, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
You
with
know,
the big band. Yeah.
for years, Art has had this band called the Heavenly Band, and it's a big band that plays arts, pretty much exclusively arts music. Though he's got a couple of other people that have been in the band that have written things for it. The guitarist Mark McCarran and
Oh,
Jan Leader and some other people.
mhm.
Um, and so many people have passed through that band. Those
Yeah.
rehearsals were always a joy. I never knew who was going to show up. It was like old home week.
Yeah.
And, I saw Jack Walrath after having not seen Jack in the
Yeah.
longest time. We both showed up for one of your rehearsals.
He just came on a gig that I have on Halloween. He's still playing with the band.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
And
Wonderful.
I hear that Claire Daly is not well too.
She's in hospice now.
Yeah, I
She's
love
a
Claire.
good friend. She let me rehearse at her place for years when I had a 6-horn band. It's a 9-horn band now with 5 rhythm and singers, whatever. But a lot of the things are instrumental. I just added vocals later, sort of reluctantly. But I was mostly into like just instrumental music.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a period where there was actually kind of a lucrative it got a bit well, somewhat more lucrative during the what I call the swing scare of
Mhm.
the 19
Yeah,
of the early 2000s, of the 1990s,
right.
where all of a sudden the swing, a lot of it was rockabilly, but nevertheless it was,
Yeah,
there were these supper club and those kind of places that all of a sudden there were gigs
right.
basically that used horns, that didn't just use guitars.
Yeah,
And so, your band started to get some gigs during that period
yeah.
in the
Yeah, I have a six-piece group with three horns and three rhythm that sort of can do that kind of work. And I do swing numbers and stuff, because it's getting a gig for six people is hard enough. Getting a gig for 15 people is it all but impossible, these
well,
days.
we did it out of a labor of love, I mean, like
Uh,
they were, not to, you couldn't send your kids to college on those gigs, but
no.
yeah, couldn't even send them to high school on those. No,
Yeah.
but there was nevertheless a lot of wonderful music played, and there are some recordings we have at the Iridium that I did with you guys, and
Yeah,
I think they came out pretty well.
that stands up pretty good to the test of time. I
Yeah,
started the Heavenly Band back in 78, so 87? Oh, 87. But I had written some charts for it at Berkeley, but
yeah.
you know.
Now
Well,
there are a couple other people in Boston. I wondered that
Pilkington had excursions. I did some writing for his group that I
who was
later.
that? Who excursions by which group?
Bob Pilkington, the trombone player, he taught at Berkeley for got about 40 years. He just recently retired.
Uh,
Very creative guy, he had like a six-horn band. So I was sort of fashioning my heavenly band from that, soprano sax, alto sax, tenor sax, you know, flute, trumpet, trombone, those six horns. And later I doubled on the flutes, I doubled on the trumpets, and I added a bass trombone. So it went from six horns to nine horns.
right. There were a lot of. It was an
Excuse me.
unusual instrumentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now, oh, also, I remember one student of mine. You did some things with him, or he did some things with you, as I recall. Um, Gus Sillis.
Gus Chillis, yeah, I played in his group. Yeah,
Sillis, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And he was from Chicago originally, and he was in New York for a while. I remember he was booking Visionis
right.
for a while.
Yeah,
But what happened to him? Is he around still? You ever hear?
still around. I think he moved up to Minnesota and then he moved out to LA or something. I'm not really in touch with him that much, but I played in his group. We did a couple things in Riles there and different things.
He made a couple of recordings with a tune of two of yours are on them, I think.
Yeah, a couple of my tunes are on one. Yeah.
Now, did you get to know Jackie Byard in Boston?
Buddy, I had a very fun relationship with him. He would let me sit in with his big band.
Uh-huh.
And, do you have any charts you want me to read? He says, look, you just play your percussion and have fun, and I was like, sounds good to me, man.
The Apollo Stompers.
Yeah, man. I mean, he never put a chart in front of me or nothing. And he would compliment me, but he never said, don't do this or don't do that. He was totally open to what I was doing. And at the time I was still in like a freewheeling kind of thing, but I had heard him a couple times, so I knew some of the charts anyway, you
Uh-huh.
know. So I wasn't there, flying blind, so to speak.
Because he was also such a wonderful arranger.
And
And,
a great alto player. He didn't have a
oh
great.
yeah.
My God, I heard him one time play the blues just by himself. I mean, he went on for about 15 minutes, and it was like from the beginning of the blues up to like the hip modern stuff. I mean, this guy was a genius, man.
He really was. And funny.
Special, special guy, man.
One time he was in France. They have this thing that George Wein had, a
Right.
festival in Nice called La Grande Parade du Jazz, the Great Parade of Jazz. And they would have all these different musicians in kind of jam session situations.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'd play in groups, sometimes they wouldn't. So Jackie was there. I was over there it was my first time in Europe. And it's 1975. And Jackie was over there, and George Wein, he'd come up with George Wein in Boston. They knew each other like before George Wein, when George Wein was a pre-med student before he got into the jazz business and played piano.
Played piano, right.
He knew Jackie. But Jackie was upset because George hadn't hired him to come to this festival. So Jackie shows up on his own expense, on his own dime. He and his wife come to Nice. And Jackie's just there roaming around with his. Sometimes he'd play piano and he'd sit in with whoever would let. He'd ask, could he play it too, or they'd just see him there and sure, you want to blow, So he also had his tenor with him.
Yeah.
So he's there, and one day, the Ruby Braff George Barnes group is playing, and Jackie is sitting in. And they've got Michael Moore on bass, and I think it was Oliver Jackson or somebody on drums, maybe Grady Tate, and it was a very good band. And Ruby and George Barnes, guitarist, and Jackie's sitting there and he's playing his tenor, and it's not coming out right. It's like it's a little stifled. So he's taking the horn out of his mouth. Now there's about 1,000 people at least. It's an open air concert, so the grass is covered with all these people listening, and Jackie's like playing, and then he's scratching his head and exaggeratingly doing that, like kind of, and then he comes back and he tries to play again. The rhythm section's still churning away, and he's like, he can't, and finally he's looking bugged, and then he finally reaches in the bell of his horn, and he pulls out a baguette, a sandwich, a sub sandwich. His wife had made him that day. He said that he didn't realize that she packed it. She put it in his bell.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but
I'm thinking,
my theory.
when I heard him, he was playing alto, so I'm thinking maybe he's thinking alto and he's got the tenor in his hand. I don't know, whatever.
Well, he had both of them, but he was with his tenor that day. But I said to myself, he says that I think his wife's name was either Marie or Louise. I knew her too, but that he says she put it in his horn. I think he staged the whole thing. I think he planned it as like a comedy bit. He could have done that. It was his.
He had quite a sense of humor as well,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sometimes, just one joke after another.
I loved what he did with Mingus. He played some really cool stuff with Mingus.
Oh, he did. And but yeah, I never played with them together actually, but I got to play with them individually. But now Thomas Chapin.
Yeah, we had a group together for years.
Thomas, a lot of people aren't hip to him, but he was really a really wonderful musician. Thomas was an alto player and a flute player.
Right.
And he was one of the cats that he had a truly original approach. He's about our age, right? He was like our generation for sure.
He's on my first seats, the first flight, the first thing I put out. He did a couple of solos.
He is.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately for those of you who don't know, Thomas got a rare disease. I'm not sure what it was, but
leukemia. His bones.
Yeah, so not that rare, but a disease.
Yeah, it killed him.
And he didn't quite make 40. Did he make 40? I don't think he made maybe just over 40.
Yeah, a little bit over 40, but that was it. It was an earlier exit than should have been for him,
I knew him as a nice guy, and I liked listening to him. I went to hear him one night, and in Northampton, Massachusetts, at the Iron Horse, I think it was called.
Right.
And he just sounded beautiful. I mean,
a lot of fire in his playing, man.
Yeah, he really did. He really, he was of my generation. He was really one of my very favorite
Oh yeah,
saxophone players.
serious. Yeah, we had a band for years, man. Yeah, he would come out to my place in Kyoto Fujiwara, the bass player. He's in Japan now.
I'm cute.
Had,
Yeah.
had a nice thing there, with the trio playing my tunes, his tunes, Kyoto's tunes, and some more.
Do you have tapes of that? Do you have any?
I probably do have some cassette tapes of that. Yeah.
You should think about digitizing them and
Yeah.
getting them out. And I bet that there's some real interest
Oh, yeah. There's
in
some good
in
stuff.
Thomas.
We were playing
Certainly,
the 55 bar one night, and you were playing over at a bucket of fish. So you might have seen us playing together there.
yeah, I saw that you were the
We
kettle
were
of fish. I
there the
remember that was
same night. I was at 55 and you were at the bucket of fish or whatever. Same night.
kettle of fish.
Yeah. This is a long time ago.
Right, the kettle of fish actually at that time
Yeah.
was called the monkey's paw.
Oh, okay.
Came
Well,
kettle of fish after that.
yeah, okay.
I said these guys, I knew they were doomed. I mean, when you open up a club and give it the name of a curse, Edgar Allan Poe, the curse of the monkey's paw. I mean,
Oh, baby. Yeah.
did they really want to succeed? I mean, I had to ask myself,
I forgot that. Yeah.
But no, I remember you guys being there, but I remember that I didn't hear you. That I should have.
Who came in to hear us almost all the time was Cecil Taylor.
Well, he used to live at the 55.
Yeah. I mean,
He was there all the time.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, not that he wouldn't come to hear you, but he was there. Just that was his residency.
Okay.
No, because I used to go in there.
Let's put it that way. I don't know whether I assume that he came to hear us because he would stay all night.
Yeah, no, but that was his watering hole.
Oh, I see.
That was his because I used to converse and argue with him there.
Yeah, of course. Of course, yeah.
But you know, well, but Thomas was. He seemed like a very nice person too.
Oh, he's a sweetheart of a guy. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so you should.
No doubt.
Yeah, you go fishing for those tapes because I bet they're very valuable.
Yeah, I should do that.
And
I haven't listened to him in a long time. I don't play free anymore, really. I kind of left that scene. I play things with chord changes and, you know, there's a few like left center things in the big band, but, I graduated from that school and moved on to playing tonal music.
well, the thing with Thomas and also Jackie was how they could kind of keep a foot in both worlds that way. Ira Sullivan too.
Yeah.
He became a little more mainstream as he got older too. Ira started out very mainstream, and then he stepped into the free world.
Yeah.
And but I think that that was something I liked about those guys because I was kind of doing that myself.
Yeah.
To some extent for a while because I was hanging out with Paul Bley.
Ira would call me to play with his group there at the Unitarian Church there in South Miami. Not that often, but maybe once a month, something like that.
Well, we both grew up. My family moved around a lot, but I had a substantial part of I started to play at the age of 13. We were living in Miami. And then, I left at 15 and, kind of went to study with Phil Woods and then to live in New York. Yeah. But I was always coming back to Miami as long as my mother was alive, and she died in 1984, to come home for the Christmas holidays, and sometimes just to catch some warm weather in the middle of cold winters and played with Ira and Tony Castellano and Joe DiOrio and those guys that were down there.
Oh yeah, Joe DiOrio, yeah.
And so you and I would run into each other down there sometimes too, because you'd be visiting. You'd be down there.
Yeah, I lived down there.
Yeah, but you left in a fairly you grew up in a kind of weird family in the sense. I mean, I had a weird family as well. I shouldn't classify it that way, but
You're right.
you know,
Well,
um,
I don't take offense at all.
well, can I mention your father was a policeman, right?
Yeah,
So, a
yeah.
lot of us. It's interesting the contrast between policeman and jazz musician. You can't get further from, further from the what is it? The tree.
Yeah.
The branch follows the leaf of the tree, or some one of those cliches.
My leaf blew way far away from
Yeah,
there.
that's right. Yeah. An apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and your apple fell miles away from your tree, right?
My three brothers ended up being in law enforcement and policemen of us as well. I'm
My.
the only one. I was a security guard for one day, and that was it. I wasn't his blood son. I was, a stepson. He adopted me. I have his name. He adopted me.
So you were an adopted child. Did you know your
Yes.
your birth parents? Your mother was is your mother your birth mother? She was adopted.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, we are hearing the disembodied voice you're hearing in the background is a wonderful woman, Art's lovely and devoted wife of oh my gosh, what could we say? 50, 45,
45 years.
45
Yeah.
years.
Claudia Bienenfeld
Claudia Bienfeld. Hey Claudia, I'm real polite. Claudia, want to come over for a second?
Sure.
Say hello.
Hi there.
Hi. I mean, I've known you both for a long time.
Yeah.
And, as a couple, I've known you. And I have never seen two people closer than you two. And I've seen a lot of people. I mean, I know Dave and Karis are very close, and it's not a competition, but, I've never seen uh, such a beautiful, copacetic relationship. I've seen a lot of.
Well, you saw us up close. You lived at our house at different times of your
That's
life.
right. That's right. When I was between domiciles, let's say,
Yes.
there have been times when when I have been there, and this is the least symbiotic of relationships. You guys really, the way you give to each other, the way you've both allowed each other the freedom. I don't mean infidelity or sexual freedom. That's not what we're talking about. But the freedom to be who you are, both of you.
She's very tolerant, extremely tolerant.
Well, I must agree with you on
Yeah.
that. Though I think you've been a very good husband too.
Well, I do my best.
Yeah, I mean,
This was my girl. As soon as she walked away, walked in front of me, it was like, oh my God, there's my girl. I got to go get her.
well,
And
Claudia, come back for a minute, please. Let's talk for a minute about. I talked to John Handy and his wife, the great alto player, and they had the funniest thing. They had entirely different impressions of their first date. I mean, the events were the same, but what they felt was, well, I knew she was feeling like, no, I wasn't feeling like that. Oh, you weren't. And then it was like that. So let's trace. You guys met each other. You said this is how'd you meet?
I
And
was at the Brighton Food Co-op playing a little jazz trio gig, and she walked by, and I just put my drums down and followed her, and tried to convince her to stay for the gig, and she was there to hear the music. So I was like, oh, great. I'd like to talk to you after the first set, we just hit it off like a head-on collision.
really, right?
Yeah, straight away.
Is he speaking? That's the truth, Claudia. That's pretty much what happened.
Yep. I said on our first date, we're going to be old and fat and 50 together, and at the time we were both like around 30, and I just knew this was the love of my life. I knew it straight away. Before I even said a word to her, I knew that this was my girl.
And you had similar feelings, Claudia, or
No,
What do you think about that?
well, he followed, see, so the gig was at the Boston Food Co-op and hadn't started yet. And I went to hear the music, but first I went into the main part of the store to take care of some business, not shopping, but I was on some committee or something, and I was looking for somebody's name in the card file or something or other. And he followed me in, and he pretended that he was lost.
Of course I was.
And he had this woolen cap pulled down over his forehead, and I thought he was like a lot younger than he was. And he just started chatting to me. But once the first set was over and we were taking a walk together, and then I was smitten by him.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't much like, he saw me right away. I didn't get it right away. But
She looked like
soon.
she floated across the room, you know. It was like an angel on wings, you know.
Oh,
Just absolutely knockout gorgeous, you know, which of course,
oh,
you know.
Yeah.
cool. Well, that smile, I'll tell you, it lit me up. When I met her, I was kind of depressed and kind of in between, you know, life changes and looking for a place to live and not having one. And you guys were way out at the end of Brooklyn there, almost in the ocean. I mean, you were
Yeah,
far
too
out.
close to the ocean.
Right, yeah, but you know, and you made me feel so welcome. And you know, it wasn't a huge home, but I mean, you guys really, and just seeing Claudia in the daytime. I mean, you know, I knew, but you know, but Claudia just was always smiling and like making me feel like something awaited me today that was going to be better than this. Not than your house, better than my mental state. But it might improve.
I'll just never forget, we had a tiny, tiny, tiny place in Brooklyn. And so you were sleeping on the living room floor because we didn't have a big sofa that you could sleep on. And I just remember having to step over you every time I had to leave the house to go to work. You know, you kept
Yeah,
sleeping. It's pretty
yeah,
funny.
you just step over me and
No
there I
problem.
was, and we'd yeah, but it was I had wonderful times, and thank you, you know, for that.
No
I
problem.
think you did some cooking for us too.
Yeah, you made pork chops and turned the place into a grease ball.
Oh yeah, but they're good pork chops, right?
All the pork chops were rocking, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me
That's
step out when you talk, guys talk music.
that's the
Uh,
important part. So
But you had lived at our place a couple other times, because I remember another time Brooke had gone off to school to college, and you were sleeping in what used to be her bed in her room. So you
your
weren't
daughter,
always,
right?
yeah,
Right,
you had been elevated to a bunk bed, you know, later on.
right. That was true. I mean, I didn't always sleep on the floor. Yeah, that was and I think I slept in a kind of sleeping bag. It wasn't on the naked floor, you know. It was, I think, there was
No.
like we did set me up in
Oh, we gave
a
you some,
makeshift bed.
yeah,
Yeah, you know, I
even a
had
pillow, you know.
yeah, I had that, and you know, I was happy, and we'd be up all night anyway, hanging out and you know, doing music and you know, working on things, you know, and analyzing monk tunes and stuff,
Yeah.
and you know, so yeah, we did that, and then there were some terrible gigs. Well, we played some gigs together, and one thing Art has done is, you know, probably every kind of gig a drummer can do. You know, you've always supported your family, and sometimes it wasn't playing the best music, you know, but it was gigs that would pay you and keep the you know keep the rent going and that kind
I
of
didn't
thing.
turn down many gigs, you know, whatever came my way, I took, you know,
He did all the gigs he could, but I was the breadwinner. I have to
for
correct you on
sure,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Very, very, yeah.
well,
I
you
went,
had the steady.
I had the steady work and he followed his dream and I supported that.
You know, I would do the housework, I would do the dinners and,
Yep.
do the laundry and that whole bit, you know.
Claudia was teaching school,
Switched roles, you know, we switched roles, you know.
right? You mostly taught school, right, Claudia?
Not mostly. I did a lot of things over the years, and I don't like to talk about my career, though. It wasn't a career, it was a bunch of jobs, including the teaching. So that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Right. So you had a lot of employment and Art had a vocation.
Right.
That's what I tell people about Tony Castellano. I said he didn't really have a profession, but he had a vocation. And I
Wow.
could say that about myself too. You know, I never considered myself a professional musician the way some other cats were.
Yeah.
You know, I was sort of, it wasn't a hobby either. That would be an avocation, but it was something that dedicated to a vision, you know, but, you know, I
Well,
didn't.
when I went on the road, I would come back with just about every penny that I made. I wouldn't spend any money on anything. You know, I was the man who would wash his clothes by hand, you know, to save a buck, you know. So if I
Yeah.
made, you know, 700 a week, I would come home with 650 at least, you know. So
Well, I know,
I was screwed, you know,
I know you're, you know, kind of, oh, you know, I wouldn't say sometimes it's necessary to be frugal,
oh
and
yeah,
your frugality is legendary.
yes.
You know, also, Claudia, Art has a tendency to, and I tend to be like this too, which I try not to be, but anything he sees in the street that's free, when people are leaving anything, you see, and in New York, a lot of people leave things outside their house, or then, you know, you'll be driving with Art and we'll see like a chair or a table or some kind of thing, and well, Art will stop the car. And you had that van for so long; it was very easy
Ah,
to just take anything you see and say, you know what, I'll do something with that. I can do something with that, and
maybe throw most of this stuff out, but some of it turned into furniture, you know.
right, you know, he would do that.
All kinds of non-matching furniture we've had over the years, still have. But finally, I had to say to him, Art, we have more ballpoint pens than we will use in our lifetime. You don't have to pick up the next one. Right?
Yeah. The last time I
Good.
tried to pick up one, I fell down and I couldn't get up. I had a Guillain-Barré syndrome, which I still have at this point, you know.
Oh,
So I'm hoping to find my legs in a month or two. But
well, you will. I have some faith in you.
thank you, sir.
You've got a lot of strength of character. It's taken you this far. It shouldn't. Well, feet don't fail me now. That's why
Please. Yeah,
you're
for
actually literally in that situation, right? I mean,
yeah.
I was 4 months in, you know, 2 months in the ICU and 2 months in rehab, so 4 months in a row in 2021 without, uh, well, without my horns and without and bedridden. And when I got out, I mean, they gave me some. I did a little walking in the hospital, but I really couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And you know, now I've got them back. I don't think I'm going to be running any marathons or sprinting even, but I can get by. You know, even I don't have to push the wheelchair.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, so there's a. What was very funny though, when we got back from the hospital, I sat down in my chair, this famous chair right here, and I had just gotten out, and I sat down, and as I tried to get up, I forgot that I couldn't walk. And I think I told you, but I'll tell the world this now. I slid down out of the chair and just slid onto the floor. And then my wife tried to pick me up, and I tried to get myself up by pushing on the floor with her tugging me. And of course, I couldn't get up. So we had to call the EMTs.
Yep.
The fire department, oh, she says, we call it was the fire department. And the fire department came over, all the sirens and everything are coming outside and everything. And, you know, and then they came up, the fire department people, and here I was on my butt on the floor, having slipped out of the chair. And they said, what do you need? What do you need? Who's, you know, what is it? And they said, could you just sit him back up into the chair? We can't get him up. So that's what happened. You know, but but it's, I still do these walks in the hall, and they're taxing, but
Yeah.
you do it. And so then I'm thinking, some of the other cats that have passed through your band. I mean, there's so many, and
There's a bunch, yeah.
you've got these recordings, and then you did some shows, and well, I'm trying to think of what other notable experiences. Which
Well, at Misbehaving, I was in this show band with Ain't Misbehaving. We played over in East Germany, and the wall had just come down, so we were the first American band to play over there. And it's a mixed show. There's black and white people, and some of the cats over in East Germany didn't take to me being a part of that, and they would stand there and glare at me, and I'd wave at them and smile. And
now these were white people in Germany, but they just thought you should be black if you're in a black show.
well, no, that I don't know what their problem was, but they obviously had a problem with it. And it was really quite an experience to see how they lived over there. It was rough times over there for them. You know,
Uh-huh.
they would heat rocks, in their fireplace, and use that as heat into steam. And you know, how the world is. But like the band was white, you know, and the cast was black, you know. So there was a mixture there whenever we were in the hotel together eating or whatever.
And
We would sit together
right,
and
there was no problem between the cast and the band, right? I mean, that was
none at all, man. We're all brothers and sisters, which we are.
the outsiders.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
that, some people didn't take too well to that. And that's their problem.
yeah.
That was good. I did a 4-month tour of like Germany and all sorts of other places, Austria, the Netherlands, Sweden, Switzerland. It was a really fun tour, mostly one-nighters. So it was a little rough that way, but I really enjoyed the Fats Waller music. You know, it was a Broadway show, and then we were doing it on the road. I went out a
Yeah,
couple
I
times.
remember Hank Jones did the New York version of it, right? He was musical director, I think, for the original Broadway version.
Cool.
I think Hank was the main cat with that. Now, of course, we should talk about your brother-in-law. Claudia's sister, Lottie, is a very fine jazz trombonist,
Right.
and she was married for many years to a wonderful trumpet player,
John McNeil.
John McNeil. And John just passed away very, very recently,
Yeah.
a week or so ago. And I remember John when he was recording with Tom Harrell, because Tom was playing with me at Sweet Basil at that time in the 70s. And John would come down and we'd let him sit in, not let him, but he would sit in with us the last set so he could play more with Tom. I thought they should play more. So we let John, we like John's playing. And he's very original and imaginative. And
Oh, yeah. Very brave player. Yeah. Very unique.
yeah, and a funny guy, great sense of humor too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
You know. So you guys were close through all these years too.
We were, they were kind of to themselves, but when we would be around each other, we would hang, the vibe was pretty good.
To me, Michael Jeffrey Stevens, you've been playing with Michael a bit, and as we were talking about playing inside and outside,
Yeah.
Michael tends to be on the, let's say, the far left in music, as far as in the more of Paul Bley inspired type of free jazz. So, in a certain way, we come full circle with you, having started out kind of in more of a free jazz kind of idea with the Woodstock thing, then getting straight ahead for a long time, and now through Michael Jeffrey, kind of going back into a more abstract approach to things.
But seasoned with more tradition these days,
Right, but Michael is. Tell us a little bit about these records you've done recently. I think you have 3 new records with him.
Yeah, on the Consolidated Artist Recording label. And I have 2 records on Soul Kid Jazz of my sextet. That those are relatively recent, as well as the Summit with my big band that Bob's on, and my quartet from the Ear In with Danny Walsh and John Davis and Marco Panacea.
Yeah, I want to hear those. I also like your album titles. I think I like Reasons to Be Thankful.
Yes.
That's really nice. And I like Certain Relationships.
Yes.
I really like those titles that you came up with for those.
Oh, thank you.
I like those. And, Michael Jeffrey, as we were saying, there's a little bit of a different direction than you had been in for a while. Also, I hear that he lives in the South, like in North Carolina. Where is he? Somewhere like that. And
which is right near Asheville.
Asheville. So
Yeah.
was he hurt in this?
Yeah, his garage was hurt. Some of his land got washed away. About a dozen trees fell and had him hemmed into his place. He still doesn't have electricity yet. He's getting some help with some food and water, but they're roughing it a lot still. Yeah.
Oh my! Wow.
It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, please tell him well, if you get to talk to him, which I might. But
yeah, we're close. We speak often.
well, I'm really sorry about that. But he's a fine musician.
Yeah.
And then, so you've got quite an extensive discography. It turns out.
I got eight CDs out, which I'm proud of all of them. So I don't cringe when I listen to them, so they're fine.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
That you haven't found anything cringeworthy.
Thank you for all the inspiration and all the lessons that you've given me. You're a wonderful, wonderful artist. I'm proud to know.
Oh, thanks. You too, baby.
Right. Good, and if not, at least enjoy it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, I think that you're going to get back to playing, and you've had a really nice band lately featuring a pianist named John Davis, who's a very
recorded a thing, with the Summit label, the same label that you're on. I had
my records with you are on that, right?
Yeah, same label, But this was like a quartet with Danny Walsh and Marco Panacea that we had played at the Ear In for years.
Oh, that's right. I used to play with you.
That was a gig that you had for a couple of years. That was one of my longest standing gigs in town.
That was a lot of fun. I remember those Tuesday nights.
Yep.
At the Ear In.
Tuesdays.
The Ear In, yes, and Danny Walsh, who's a wonderfully creative player.
Yeah.
And he was one of your Berkeley mates, as I recall.
Oh yeah.
You guys go back to that. There was a lot of talent at Berkeley in those days too. The students were all, a lot of great cats. That I won't even go into naming them because there's too many, and I would leave somebody out.
Yeah.
But it was. I was taking a break from New York.
Yeah.
At the time because I had been just having too good a time in New York. Life was a constant, kind of a constant party, and I took a little break to try to readjust my my mind.
Well, you're teaching at Berkeley, right?
Yeah, I spent 3 semesters at Berkeley, and then I got a call from Chet Baker saying, "Aren't you a little young to be out to pasture?" And then he invited me to come to Europe with him
Cool.
for 6 weeks, and I paid pretty well, and he was playing with Chet. So
Yeah.
I never went back to Berkeley.
Yeah. Well, if I had the choice of playing with Chet and going to Berkeley, I'd play with Chet too, you know.
Yeah, though I must say, I mean, I had some really good students. I mean, you were one in there, and Ralph Moore,
Yeah.
Hendrik Merkins,
Yeah.
um, Wallace Roney, Greg Osby,
Yeah.
um, Branford Marsalis,
Uh-huh.
Dane Watts was in one of my ensembles.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a lot of talent during those years.
Donald Harrison, yeah, all these guys,
Yeah, a bunch,
and women, Claire Daly,
women.
and, Jennifer. What was her last name? Jennifer, good tenor player.
Yep.
Yeah, and um, yeah, several, just a lot of really good people. Dave
Yeah.
Kukowski was there.
Dave was in my band.
Yeah,
Scott Robinson, he was in my band. You know.
Scott Robinson, yeah, there's a talented guy too. And Ted Klum was at Berkeley then as well. And yeah, so I mean, the thing was, there was one class, like I would wake up early to practice for those guys. They were, they were so good. But still it was time to go when Chet called me. It was right.
Yeah, for sure.
To do.
Yeah.
But well, I'm still hoping you'll get your legs back, and we'll be able to record.
Yeah.
I can't really go out and play anymore either. I'm handicapped as well, with this emphysema thing, and this.
I'm gonna come by. We'll put something together, play some tunes,
Yes,
I
yeah,
think
I can do
I'd finally be able to catch up with you and hang.
that. Yeah, well, anyway, it's been wonderful having you here. And
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
oh, it's wonderful. And
Looks like Jessie oh, she just came back. Okay.
yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up. I mean, there are a lot of other things we could get into, but I think this is pretty.
Yeah, let me know if it's missing too many pieces, we'll fill in the blanks or whatever.
Yeah, anything you want to
Nice
say?
meeting you, Jessie. Thank you.
So we thank you all for watching, and we especially thank our special guest, Art Lillard, and his wife, Claudia, for their contribution to today's On the Real Side. And, we say, if you like this, which we hope you do, give us a like, because we can always, it helps us more than you might know. It helps us keep going and bringing you these, what we consider important to the jazz, to the history of the music, important contributions with all these wonderful people we're able to talk to. So I say, once again, thank you, Art, thank you, Jessie, and thank you all for watching. And we'll see you next time on the Real Side.